I think that there's going to be a lot of companies that are, I mean, right now they're probably putting their 2024 budgets together. I suspect that much of that budget is going to be spent in the first quarter of next year. And they're going to sit back and maybe wait to see how the election results go. I mean, there's just been such a, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, a very anti-oil and gas sentiment the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it has affected many things. I mean, including capital, about not getting into the space. So I think what's going to companies are just going to observe how the election results go. I don't see a change in their plan and how they deploy capital on the locations that they pick. I don't see any substantial or significant need to increase rig count. I don't see public companies doing that. But the good news with public companies in terms of the S&P is that they really outperform every different space or sector, including tech. So I think that capital will slowly move its way back into the oil and gas space. How the election results go, I don't know. And I don't know what their pivot point is for a lot of companies, PE, private or public. But that's just my take on, they're just going to probably spend a great deal of their 2024 budget in Q1 and then see how the election results turn out.
That's pretty much what we see every 4 years. I mean, we'll slow down, wait and see, and then depending on how it works out, they get going again one way or another.
Right. And depending on how that works out, amongst other things, when the OPEC production cuts roll off, and at some point, I believe that public oil and gas companies are going to have to show investors a mechanism for growth. And that usually comes in the form of either making a large acquisition into a new play or bolting onto an existing play, or commencing a couple of leasing campaigns and drilling new wells in new areas. So that's, like we talked about last couple of years, it's been very disciplined. It's been returning capital to investors through dividends and stock repurchases, which I think that space is extremely happy about that. But at some point, I think that companies are going to have to show a mechanism. We know that, I mean, there's a couple of things we know. We know that undrilled inventory is getting low, for sure, based on that internal rate of return cutoff that we talked about, whether it's 25% or 50% rate of return. We know inventories are getting low. And the plays that have the largest undrilled inventory, from what I've seen, is the Bakken, the Powder, and there's some areas, extensive or expansive areas in the Permian as well. So, that's to point to the mechanism for growth. That's kind of how, I see, the space at large is that there's always reports every week that come out about remaining inventory for these companies, right? And largely that's done by external sources that just look at a map and they see how many sticks are in a DSU across a large play and say, okay, well, you only have this many locations left. And that's where we get back to the infill drilling, that most of those locations are being taken off the board within those DSUs. And there's not a lot of opportunity outside of those units for these companies that they want to pursue at the moment. They just want to drill their best wells right now, which they most certainly should. But, and living within cash flow and financing your drilling operations, I mean, that is obviously absolutely fantastic. But I just think at some point there's going to have to be a switch on the growth side that they're going to have to go ahead and hit.